Look around the room you're in. The walls, the floor, the empty air. It all feels like a smooth, continuous container, a reliable box where physical objects exist. Evolution tuned our brains to perceive the world this way. It works perfectly for navigating a kitchen, catching a ball, or building a skyscraper. Space extends, time flows, and solid things stay solid. By the 20th century, we had mapped the rules of this container brilliantly. Albert Einstein's general relativity proved that space and time bend and curve to create gravity, mapping the cosmos with astonishing precision. At the exact same time, we mastered the microscopic world. This photograph shows an early MRI prototype, a medical technology that only exists because quantum mechanics accurately tracks the invisible probability clouds of atoms. We mapped the stars and we mapped the cells. Both of these theories are triumphs of human thought. But they show a quiet assumption that space is a real physical backdrop where all this physics happens, and if you zoom in far enough, that assumption completely shatters. If you want to find the absolute bottom of reality, you have to look for the smallest possible pixel of space. Physicists call this the Planck length. It is the exact boundary where the universe runs out of itself. The Planck length is to a single proton what a proton is to the observable universe. Apply physics here, and the math fails. Relativity and quantum mechanics contradict, producing catastrophic nonsense. Equations divide by zero. Smooth space stops working. Instead of a smooth continuum, physics suggests a quantum foam. It is a roiling storm where tiny wormholes and microscopic black holes violently rip in and out of existence in fractions of a second. You are sitting on top of this right now. The calm solidity of the floor beneath you is an illusion. If the geometry of space loses its footing at the absolute bottom, something else entirely must be holding the universe together. In 1997, a theoretical physicist named Juan Maldacena published a paper that offered a radical rescue operation for this breakdown at the Planck scale. He discovered a mathematical duality. The gravity inside a 3D volume is perfectly equivalent to the quantum math on a flat 2D surface. This holographic principle implies that everything inside our three-dimensional universe is encoded by information living on a lower dimensional boundary. We can see hints of this out in the cosmos. This image of a supermassive black hole shows an object whose immense gravitational volume is entirely encoded by the surface area of its event horizon. Space is not a physical box we live inside. What we experience as a 3D interior is a derived projection generated by a flat surface. This raises an immediate mechanical question. How exactly does flat boundary data translate into the physical volume of our universe? Physicist Mark van Ramsdonk provided a compelling answer. Van Ramsdonk showed interior geometry emerges from quantum entanglement. As nodes link on a 2D boundary, their entanglement constructs structured 3D space inside. Sever this quantum connection, and the interior geometry violently tears apart into isolated fragments. Space is held together by information. Physical distance is an illusion, assembled from quantum relationships that do not themselves live in space. Realizing that the 3D reality we inhabit is actually the underside of a surface projection is deeply disorienting. It forces us to reconsider what the universe is actually made of. Over the last century, physics has steadily moved away from tracking solid objects. We shifted to mapping probability fields, and now we are left measuring pure information. The bedrock of reality is not a collection of stuff. There are no solid nouns at the bottom of the universe. Instead, reality is constructed entirely of verbs. It is a network of events, ongoing processes, and entangled relationships. Existence is not a static property that an isolated object simply has. It is a dynamic, active process of connection that must be constantly held together. This rigorous output from theoretical physics echoes questions that a completely different tradition has been asking for millennia. Ancient philosophy and theology have long discussed the concept of the logos. It translates roughly to rational principle, the ordering structure that makes reality intelligible and coherent. If the universe is built of projected information rather than clockwork gears, it behaves less like a physical container and much more like a text. The laws of physics, the strict geometry of space, and the entanglement that binds it all together look remarkably like a sustained act of communication, an ongoing utterance. The room you are sitting in right now is not an empty, self-sufficient box. It is an actively sustained expression of pure